Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Strength for Your Purpose podcast. Coming at you this week with an interview, so you don't have to hear me talk by myself this week, which I'm really excited about. You, all of you out there listening, know how much I love these interviews, and this one is going to be no different here. Really excited to introduce this person to you all. I am joined this week by Dr. Lizzie Baker, who is a pediatric hospitalist with an executive master's in healthcare leadership. I already can't wait to ask more questions about all of this. She lost her mother 1 year ago following a valiant 7-year battle with terminal lung cancer. Since then, Lizzie has been on a mission to build legacy. She has been involved with the Trek Across Maine for 5 years and with the Dempsey Challenge for 8. She's a philanthropist and volunteer with these organizations, serving as the cycling training coordinator and cycling ambassador for the Dempsey Challenge and as a part of the 2023 Spirit of the Trek. She has donated half of the program costs for Space to Breathe, which is a Dempsey retreat for adolescents who are exposed to cancer, and will be an active volunteer with the program this year. She recently traveled to Washington, D.C. as the Maine and New Hampshire Lung Force hero to advocate for lung cancer research and support funding. She is advocating for universal supported and paid leave for workers caring for their loved ones on hospice and is writing a book on creating legacy. Lizzie, thank you so much for taking the time to join me here on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Of course, yeah, very excited, as I said. So, right out of the gate here, I want to talk to you a little bit about your path to becoming a pediatric hospitalist and this other, passion, how that kind of led to this other passion of working with folks that are suffering from lung issues.
Sure. Becoming a pediatric hospitalist is a very interesting story, I guess. I'll make it short. I was a dance major in college, and I went to a college that didn't fit my interests. So I actually transferred. And when I transferred, I went to Rhode Island and I started studying psychology and philosophy. And in my junior year of college, 9/11 happened, and I felt immediately motivated to do something about this crisis. So I walked that day on 9/11 into the American Red Cross in my local area in Providence, and I was a volunteer. I went to Ground Zero for 6 weeks as a volunteer with the Red Cross. And when I came back, I started volunteering with search and rescue teams and got my EMT license. And my physician in the ED that was supervising me said, you should really think about medicine as a career. And I was like, oh, that's funny. I've never thought about that. Nobody in my family does that.
Yeah.
But I just kind of went with it. So
Yeah.
here
And and here you are. Wow,
I
that's incredible. I mean, uh, I, a lot of people have some very awe-inspiring stories from that time in our country's history, but to all of a sudden be like, you know what, I am going to go be a doctor is a pretty is a pretty unique one that I haven't heard. So, uh, what has it been in your experience as a pediatric hospitalist that's led you, aside from obviously from your mother's diagnosis, because that, I mean, that definitely stands out as a driving force, but was there something that you've seen in your career that's led you to be passionate about what the Trek Across Maine does, and what the Dempsey Center does, specifically related to lung issues?
Sure. Um, I would say I've always looked for events that support, children growing through their disease processes. And the Dempsey Challenge was the first thing that I saw as a pediatric hospitalist working in Central Maine Medical Center. And I signed up before my mom's diagnosis. I'm actually an athlete with asthma. So hashtag athletes with asthma.
Yeah,
And I believe in the Trek because it promotes, learning about and funding for and supporting people with all kinds of lung disease.
yeah.
Uh, that's something that has been not limiting in my life because I don't let it be limiting in my life, but that's something that other people can really struggle with. Asthma is a huge problem and it's very common. It's very common in children. And I think it's something that we can focus on empowering people to live with and, battle through as they go forward. So I would say, I was kind of drawn to the trek because of that as well. And my mom's story has so much to do with why I'm involved with these organizations. But as a pediatric hospitalist, I remain involved. I'm, interested in joining the board of the American Lung Association because of how broad their scope is, and because it touches so many people, not just with lung cancer, but with asthma and different lung disease.
Sure. Which I mean, obviously can be very serious in and of themselves. I mean, a lot of focus in a lot of organizations like the Trek and the Dempsey Center are focused on cancer and support of treatment and finding cures for these things, and also support for families. But yeah, I mean, asthma can be a huge thing as well, especially in kids when you're maybe a new parent and don't know what's going on, and all of a sudden your kid's having a hard time breathing. That can turn into an emergency very, very quickly. So you're right. The scope of it is incredibly important, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about what you're specifically doing, because you have a few like specific titles with the Trek. So talk to me a little bit about, I know you mentioned you're an athlete with asthma. So was cycling always something that was part of your athletic career, or is that just sort of something that you've taken on because of your, sort of credentials, your history as an athlete, and your connection to all this?
So I would call myself a skier as my primary sport.
Okay.
I'm also an obstacle course athlete. I've done a lot with Spartan races and Tough Mudder, and I've been a doctor on the sidelines of both of those races. So I've been part of World's Toughest Mudder. I love the kind of extreme sports realm. And I've been a cyclist for a long time. I was a cyclist out in Jackson Hole, and I had some setbacks. I actually couldn't clip out of my pedals, and I had a bad spill at one point, and that was a big setback. And then I came here, and I think the great part of this story is that I was nervous when I signed up for the Dempsey Challenge. And I then learned that my mom had terminal lung cancer. And I decided to go for the biggest, longest ride you possibly can with Dempsey, which was a 2-day ride. And
Wow.
that was 8 years ago. So it was 130 miles. And I was not an attuned cyclist at that point, but I have grown into someone who has a lot more experience. And I'm by no means a pro, but I know enough that I can coach other people and feel confident coming into something like the Trek Across Maine, which is
Mm.
180 miles in 3 days, to support people and be an ambassador for the
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it the the one thing that's kind of been a common thread whenever I've talked to people that really go out of their way to volunteer time, and not just to go out of their way to volunteer time, all have that root of like seeds of passion, right? So
Absolutely.
your passion for either the sport that's involved, your passion just for athletics in general, the cause that it supports, and then the foundation itself that's doing the work and supporting the cause is really all blending together, and really helps make it an experience that's a heck of a lot more than just like, hey, I'm doing this because I really love cycling
Right.
events, and it's a good cause, so I might as well do it. So I might as well do it anyways. And I'm sure the people who are benefiting from the work that the Trek Across Maine and the Dempsey Challenge um support can kind of see that and feel that, because I know some of them are kind of a part of a lot of these events as well.
Yeah, I would say, to people considering this stuff, it can be very intimidating to think about if you don't ride very often, how far you need to ride to sign up for X, Y, or Z length. And I would say that when you arrive on that day, you have no idea what you're coming into. You are coming into this community of support, and the energy is so much to carry you that it doesn't matter if you've never done this before. It
Mm,
is so phenomenally motivating in that day, and people will get you through whether it takes you X amount of hour. It doesn't even matter.
mm,
It is so motivating to be surrounded by people with this energy, and for whatever cause. And I think Trek is a beautiful thing because it just is so widespread. There's so many people with lung disease. It doesn't have to be cancer. It can be anything. It can be, you know CF. It can be bronchiolitis is a little, it could be these kids that were in the neonatal ICU who like ended up on a ventilator. It could be anything can motivate you to ride. And when you're surrounded by people that just care about the same cause, none of your training really matters. It really doesn't. You just have this energy and this support and you can do it.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I will say, however, as the cycling training ambassador, you probably suggest people do some training, correct?
It depends what you want to do. So the Trek Across Maine is quite and this is an endurance challenge. I mean, it's not a race, which is a beautiful thing. So there's nothing about these two events that is expecting you to do anything in X amount of time. And whatever you can do, you do. I mean, you'll have support. If you can't finish, someone will pick you up and will get you to the finish line. That said, Trek Across Maine is a big undertaking. I mean, it's 180 miles in 3 days. It's a lot of riding, and it's early on in the season, which is also challenging to a lot of us because we haven't been in the saddle that long. And then this week of rain is just classic for
Yeah.
Maine.
Yeah. Yeah.
A big setback, so we're not training this week. But I think I would, of course, I recommend training.
Sure.
But you could do training in all kinds of ways. So there's, people have Peloton or they can do training in the gym. There's cross training you can do. We have a lot of programs that we've written and could share with folks if they're interested.
Definitely. We'll definitely get to, I want to circle back to that about how people can possibly get involved in this if they're listening to this and going, well, it's this weekend, so
Right.
maybe I shouldn't try it this year, but maybe next year I want to get ahead of the game and can maybe spend the summer training. So we'll get back to that for sure. So heading into the event, it sounds like a lot of your correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like a lot of your volunteerism through the trek is a lot with like training and setup, and then you are participating in the trek. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So I've been involved with the lung association this year more so than in the past. I traveled down to DC as a lung force hero and talked to Congress about, funding for lung cancer research. And I also went to the State House and we discussed kind of general lung advocacy topics. So we're working on kind of getting rid of vaping and flavored anything that has to do with tobacco so that kids aren't picking up these habits.
Yeah.
So, this year was a little bit different than others, but I would say a lot of my practice is to get people together and talk about training and then work on training protocols and then talk about safety and what it means to ride on the road for 3 days and how we can be visible and how you can prepare for endurance racing and not racing. Sorry. There you go. There it is. It's not even racing.
There
just
it is.
endurance riding,
Yes.
nutrition, hydration, that kind of thing. So
Yeah. Well, actually, this seems like a really good time to talk about it. What are some of the resources that the Trek has available to get people ready for the endurance ride, not race, the endurance ride that is the Trek, that 180 miles over 3 days? And where can people find a lot of that information?
So there's a couple different routes. There's a number of teams that get together. And so it's very easy to join a team. I think this year I'll be participating with the LL Bean team, which is massive. And they are hosting training rides, but also have a lot of resources available about, kind of looking into how do you prepare hydration wise, training wise, et cetera. I prepared a long curriculum in the past that I'm happy to share with people about prepping for a 50-mile ride, which is basically, we're doing a little more than that every day. In the trek, we're doing about 60 miles a day. So, looking at that as a resource for working up to, but also, the Trek Across Maine has their own information available. And on the days, there's beautiful, wonderful support. So there's SAG vehicles, which are vehicles that follow us. They take care of all your maintenance issues. If you needed a flat fix or your chain falls off, you've got people that will come and pick you up and fix it. And the rest areas are fraught with amazing nutrition, hydration, and et cetera resources. So
Yeah.
it's a very well supported ride.
Yeah, which just gives some great confidence for someone who might be sitting here this year going, you know what, this is a good cause. Maybe I wanted to find a reason to get more active, or I used to cycle and I want something to work toward rather than just going out and doing it for exercise, gives
Yeah.
you a little peace of mind and confidence that it's doable. It's a
Yeah.
doable endeavor.
And I will say, let me just give you an example of last year. So last year on my first day, I actually had an asthma attack on the
Oh, wow.
first day of the trek across Maine. And I got in touch with the leaders and I said, hey, I'm going to have to ride this virtually for the first day. Can I just meet you at the next station, like where we meet for the second day? Can I just come in on day two? And I rode, 60 miles on my Peloton instead of riding in the actual trek outside, and it was
Mm,
fine. They were total, I mean, everybody accepted that. There's a lot of ways you can do this. You can do the whole thing virtually, you can
mm,
ride any portion virtually. Everybody wants you to participate, so anything that you can do, we're welcoming. If you just wanted to do one day of the trek, you can also do that. It's
yeah,
all available to people.
yeah, fantastic, great. No, that is great, because I think having a with something that seems on paper maybe, or to people who aren't familiar with it, as daunting as 180 miles in 3 days, having
Yeah.
those types of options and knowing that they can still help support an incredible cause, I think is very, very, very important. So as people are listening to this, the trek is this coming weekend. So give a little bit of information on kind of where it kicks off, where it ends, and are there ways that people could still be supporting this, either from like a financial aspect or even like a boots on the ground aspect, kind of like a last
Sure.
minute volunteer effort here? Give us a little bit more information about this year's trek.
So the trek has changed from a point A to point B to a loop route. And we start in Brunswick and end in Brunswick.
Mm,
And so if you are able to access the website, you can see the routes. So there's a lot of ways to participate, even if you're not riding. You're more than welcome to come out, like I said, ride a day if you want to, or ride the whole thing. But you could also volunteer at rest areas. If you wanted to show up with signs, or we love, cowbells, things that just get us going because we're riding so long, and to have anybody out there that can stand along the trek and just cheer us on is a huge deal.
mm,
So if you look at the route and that's something that's available to you, we would love to see you out there. Um, and then, you're more than welcome to donate.
mm.
Anything helps.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's great. And we'll make sure we have all of the links to that information in the show notes so that people can get involved. And I guess the last question I have that's kind of more trek related, Lizzie,
Mhm.
is how soon after this year's trek, this coming weekend here, do people start gearing up and getting ready for the larger effort of maybe being more involved next year? If they show up and they ring one of those cowbells for you as you ride by your 70 something mile of the trip here, and they get inspired to want to do more, does stuff for next year gear up pretty quickly, or is how does that flow usually go from one year to the next?
Registration's already open.
Yeah.
They are asking us to register now. There's actually incentives for registering already. I
Mm.
can't quote what they are. I saw it online today. But you can already register for 2024.
Wow.
Uh, so, and you can be at the end ceremonies. Last year was a little rainy, so we didn't have the biggest ceremony at the end, but every day there's some stuff going on at the end point, and you're welcome to come down. There's usually music,
Mm.
there's merchandise. You can come buy that stuff and then talk to us about our experience if you want to, and help us like find you so we can get you on our teams. We
Yeah.
love that.
Oh, fantastic. Great. Well, that's awesome. I really encourage everyone to check this out. I've been involved with trying to help get the word out about the trek for a couple of years now, and I've got to get to a point where we can do a little bit more than that, but I'm happy to do what I can do right now and just get the word out so that people are hearing about this great cause, donating to it, volunteering for it, and can support what they're doing, because it is a massive event. It's one that is known across the lung association community all across the United States,
Yep.
and even beyond that. And So I really want to encourage people to check that out. So make sure you all check out the links and the resources here in the show notes as well. But I've got two more questions here for you, Lizzie, that I ask all my
Yeah.
guests. So these are
I would
not,
also, if before your questions, I would just say
yes, please
also,
do.
Trek Across Maine is the biggest fundraiser for the American Lung Association in the entire United States.
Mm,
This this fundraiser brings in over $1 million every year, and we do it right here in Maine. That's a huge deal for the
mm,
entire organization of the American Lung Association. So I would encourage people to join in however you can.
that's awesome. That's great. No, that's fantastic. Right here in our backyard of Maine, in Maine too.
Great.
How amazing is that? Us Mainers are proud people to begin with. How can we not be proud of something that's the biggest
Right.
donator to this great cause in the entire nation? That's awesome. So these last couple of questions here, Lizzie, are questions I ask all of the guests that come on the podcast. They're not trick questions. There's no right or wrong answer, but I always love to get everyone's different perspective on these questions.
Okay.
So number one is, what is your definition of strength?
Oh, my favorite little phrase is called grit and grace. And
Mm,
so it's, that's what I think my mom embodied, and I'm trying to do the same, is just to kind of face any challenge in life, because we all have them,
mm,
um, with a little bit of grit and a little bit of grace.
yeah.
I think we can all just kind of take this with this. We've got this innate power and this innate kind of, not to use the word again, but gritty nature that we just can dig in and fight, but also do it so gracefully.
Mm,
And I hope that that is what I'm embodying as I go through these challenges. But I love that question.
mm, great. No,
Thank you.
fantastic answer. I love that. I love the grit and grace thing myself. That's awesome. And then the last question is, what is your true purpose in life?
Oh, that's a big one. Well, I mean, right now, I would say this year has really thrown things into perspective for me.
Mm,
And a large part of what I want to do is create legacy. And that's on behalf of my mom, but I'm also thinking about my own legacy. And so living with purpose, living with the idea that, we are in this life for X amount of time, and we need to maximize our beautiful existence on this planet, but also think about what we want to leave behind. And
mm,
so, having my mom be here for so long and have her have that grit and grace, and
mm,
then she's gone
yeah.
into whatever greater place she's gone. I'm trying to embody, what makes this a better world in the wake of her loss, but also like,
Mm,
what can she and I bring collectively to this world? And she was such a wonderful example. So I'm trying to embody that as I go forward and live with great purpose and, moment to moment, kind of be present, be grateful,
mm.
and empower other people to do the same.
Wow. That's some incredible perspective there, Lizzie. And I just have to say thank you for recognizing that and living out that true purpose. And as you already pointed out here, you were already put on this path even before your mom's diagnosis. So I truly believe that, just based on what you said, I'm getting chills here as you were saying that. And I remember you saying, like, I've started working on this long before my mom's diagnosis.
Yeah.
You truly are working on living out your true purpose in life, and going at it with grit and grace. And I commend you for that. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. It's been lovely talking to you. I really appreciate those questions. I think they're wonderful. I'm sure your
Awesome.
your podcast is phenomenal, and thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. Everyone go check out the info about the trek. Go out there and support however you can this coming weekend, and get yourself registered as a rider, as a team, as a volunteer, whatever you can do next year,
Great.
and help keep this amazing event going. Lizzie, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And thank you everyone out there for listening. If this is your first time listening, there's 120 some odd other episodes that you can certainly dive into, and new episodes are posted every week on Wednesdays. So thank you for listening. Hope you continue to. And until next time, go make it a great week. Bye.